Ay, 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 ay.
Greetings, Hitler Youth and former Eminem fans, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio News, or HBR News, number 134. Linda Sarsour, Women of the Year. With the Polecats, those critters who ferret out the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Slam Bam Badger style. Mind your spines for the cringe, hold on to your sides for the lulls, and keep your chemo at the ready for this cancer. Today's Polecat panel consists of Max Derritt, Simpson's kin, and definitely not a star-bellied sneetch, who would normally have bragged, "We're the best kind of sneetch on the beaches." It's a super obscure reference, I guess. But one of my favorite stories from Dr. Seuss. Our Polecat punster and Pussycat Punisher Hannah, Dr. Randomercam, Evil Panda, Puppet Master, and Rabid Long-Range Rhetorician, and me, the Supreme Doge in Charge, who has reached the end of his journey through the self-poisoning process, only to get dragged back down by doing this show. Today, we will be discussing the following topics. When Glamour Magazine isn't telling you how Samantha Bee is the razor-tooth front person of all women's collective conscience, or how astronaut Peggy Whiston is a feminist icon despite her earning her place in NASA due to 10 years of hard work, several rejections, and sacrificing her own health, not because of diet, they are announcing the Women of the Year 2017. This year's winners, the organizers of the Women's March, more specifically, the Islam is for Feminists Too advocate, Linda Sarsour. I'm going to let you guys drink that down a little bit.
I've tried.
Because some motherfuckers can't do anything except double down, and some of those motherfuckers write and enforce law and policy. Some individual motherfucker states are trying to codify the Dear Colleague letter into law, essentially ruining due process because listen and believe. 3 teen boys were caught on a CCTV camera doing the unthinkable. Rape? Murder? Boys being boys? No, they were seen bringing a homeless man a duvet and tucking him in so he doesn't freeze to death. Toxic masculinity, everybody. Also,
and then they raped him, right?
Also, how woke is Poland? Party House in Shoreline served as a home base for a community of hippies. It was also, according to multiple alleged victims, the scene of numerous rapes. Let us dive into this crazy story and see what we can learn from it. And finally, our bonus story for the patron-only after show. It's going to be a double feature this time, guys. Say it ain't so. Classrooms in elite colleges across the U.S. are performing what's known as progressive stacking, an affirmative action style system that privileges individuals based on their race, gender, and sexual orientation. This just in, white men still at the bottom of said stack. Some minority students at the University of Michigan have apparently felt intimidated by the interior wood paneling found throughout the historic Michigan Union building, claiming it is racist. Interior wood paneling is now racist, people. We will dive into why this is in the after show.
I'm surprised they didn't call it sexist.
Because it's wood.
Yeah, they got wood.
Only in the morning. So anyway, if you guys would like to participate in our after shows either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. If you don't want to wake up one morning and find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, please go to badgerfeed.com. I saw a conversation before the show started where somebody suggested going to feedthebadger.com. That's if you want to donate to us. We are currently doing a drive because we're going to be going to court in Calgary to hopefully finish this lawsuit that has dragged on forever. at the end of the month, and we are still taking donations. We'll actually be doing a stream this Friday. I'll be hosting and trying to get on some interesting guests and try to make it fun for you guys while we raise money to go to Calgary, or to get the Badgers to Calgary, so that we can try to finish this off. Remember, we are fighting against the Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue, as well as, in some ways, this Canada itself. So help us fight the Mary Sue at the very least. I mean, you guys really want to do that, right? But if you want to follow us in terms of our content, you don't go to Feed the Badger, you go to badgerfeed.com. Hannah, you're going to say something?
Oh, yeah. No,
Yes? Your internet? Are you having internet problems? I think Hannah's having internet.
That's a yes.
Yeah, I'll take that as a yes. I'll wait until Hannah's back. If you need to, Hannah, just reboot or something. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. So, yes, badgerfeed.com. Go to badgerfeed.com to basically get all of our updated content. All right. One other thing, I just want to catch you guys up on what's going on with me, because I haven't been around last week. So I finished my 4 rounds of chemotherapy, which I was supposed to do, and then the doctor thought I was so good at resisting poison that they gave me a bonus round of chemotherapy, which I just ended last Thursday. I
love the way you put that.
So the bonus round ended last Thursday, and I'm recovering from that. It was the worst thing ever, and I don't wish this even on Kevin Logan. I don't wish this on my worst enemy. I don't think Kevin Logan's not my worst enemy, but I don't wish it on a potato or, you know, whatever. So, but that being said, I am slowly getting my strength back. Now that it's over, my body will be healing itself pretty soon. I've been craving a lot of vitamin C. Hopefully in about a week or two, I'll be feeling pretty normal, and I'll know what food tastes like again, because I haven't since this whole thing started. And I look forward to it. But I wanted you guys to know what was going on. And lastly, there will be surgery December 19th. They're going to be removing lymph nodes and the remaining tumors. So between now and then, I can rest and recover, and I will be going to Calgary for the court thing. So hopefully, maybe we'll do something, and I'll see you guys there. It'd be kind of cool to see people. As an aside, while I'm driving, I'm going to be passing through Minnesota, so I may need a place to stay. So if there's anyone in Minnesota that's looking to house a cancer patient and his wife, just let us know. I'll figure something out, but that'd be kind of sweet. So that
give Mr. Medicare a call.
Oh yeah, I'll give Mr. Medicare a ring. I'm sure that he would let me hang out with him. Actually, that'd be pretty fucking cool, actually, to be honest. So
yeah, to be like one of the few people on the planet to have ever seen his face.
I think I know what it looks like.
Oh yeah. Well, we kind of already do. He leaked that one picture himself, where he kind of looks like the scout from Team Fortress 2.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically where we are as far as that goes. So I hope you guys. Oh, and another thing is, so this year at Halloween, this is like not a story, but I just want to throw it out there. This year at Halloween, I bought 2 big bags of chocolate candies. I got like a big thing of like those little Snickers bars, and a big thing of these Kit Kats that are actually pumpkin pie flavored, and they taste delicious. But I can't have those, so I'm not going to eat them. So I'm going to bring them with me if they hold up. So if anybody wants candy, I'll bring it with me up to Calgary. There you go. Now I've offered you guys something. Now you can officially consider yourselves whored out, or maybe I'm the whore for offering. I don't know, but yeah, we'll do that. So. As far as that goes, Halloween sucked because I got no trick-or-treaters, like none. I don't know why that is, but none. So, sad face. I mean, it's Chicago.
My Halloween was great because I didn't get any trick-or-treaters. Each to their own.
I was broadcasting on Trick or Treat night, but we did get one. Well, we were doing. I think we were doing. That was the night we were doing the.
Yes, you were doing a
stream.
stream
After show. I don't remember whether it was the stream itself or the no show after show, but it was Trick or Treat night here. We got one trick or treater, and I just happened to have a piece of candy. We didn't buy candy for trick or treat because nobody ever comes here. It's an apartment complex. Nobody has their porch lights on, but somebody did. So we're like scrambling. We gotta have something for this kid. They're gonna be so disappointed.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I bought 2 bags and no kids showed up. And
Oh,
I was
geez.
I was kind of excited because last year I wasn't around and kids showed up, but I wasn't there. So maybe this year they were like, that guy didn't give us anything last year. But I didn't see anyone at all. I didn't see anybody. So I don't know if has Halloween changed? Has Halloween changed? Because when I was
Has
a kid,
Chicago
Again?
changed?
I was gonna say Halloween's changed a lot in our lifetime.
yeah, I don't. Chicago hasn't changed that much. I've lived here my whole life, and it's always been pretty hood where I'm at. I've lived in this neighborhood pretty much my whole life. So
Don't forget, Trump's president now, so there's Nazis everywhere. You don't want to send your kids out into the streets when there's Nazis.
oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's the scariest kind of Halloween. All right. Well, anyway, let's get into the
Chicago.
stories.
Has changed.
All right, we're going to get into the story. Max, I'm going to hand it to you. Guys in the chat, lastly, those of you guys who are watching us live, if you are experiencing issues hearing Max, let us know. I'm paying attention to the comments. I know that Max is having some internet problems. Secondly, if you're having problems with the stream in general and you're on YouTube or Facebook, try going to Twitch. As from what I can tell, Twitch seems to be the most stable of the connections. So, and that's it. So yeah, move over to Twitch if you need to, and let us know if Max sounds okay. Max, the floor is yours.
All right. Yeah. Thankfully, my internet, I rebooted it, and it seems pretty stable right now, but we got to keep the good juju going. So I want some of those hippie finger excuse me, finger snaps. Yes. Random Cam knows what's up. Okay. And that goes for all of you watching. I know nobody can hear it, but trust me, the Cosmos can. So, hey guys, remember when Caitlyn Jenner won Glamour Magazine's Woman of the Year award? And at the time, all I thought was like, God, how are they going to top this level of virtue signaling?
You're an asshole.
You're an asshole. Buckle up, buckaroo. Well, maybe, I probably shouldn't have asked that question out loud because it seems like I jinxed things a little bit. So, that's why I'm asking you to do the finger snapping. I want to unjinx some stuff, So, Glamour.
Retweet.
Yes, retweet. Go to my Twitter account and retweet everything, So, excuse me. Glamour just named the recipient of 2017's Woman of the Year award, and it is going to none other than the Sharia law apologist herself, Linda Sarsour. No, I'm not fucking kidding. A woman who advocates a religion that teaches that women are half that of a man, that their husbands can beat them, is Woman of the Year. Now, for those of you who don't know what kind of person Linda Sarsour is, allow me to give you the prime example. Sarsour once said that 2 women named Bridget Gabriel and Ayan Hirsi Ali, 2 women who have spoken out against Sharia law, deserved, quote-unquote, an ass-whooping, and that they should have, quote-unquote, their vaginas taken away for making front-page covers and shit. Oh, and speaking of having vaginas taken away, the aforementioned Hirsi Ali is a victim of female genital mutilation prescribed by Islamic mandate. Now, despite the fact that this tweet has been archived, Sarsour denies that she said any such thing, so not only does she advocate the least feminist ideology on earth, she's also a liar. When CNN's Jake Tapper called Sarsour's comments about Hirsi Ali ugly sentiments, Sarsour said that Tapper was a member of the alt-right, despite the fact that Tapper is Jewish. And remember the Women's March earlier this year, organized in response to Trump's inauguration? So, like Brian said, Sarsour was one of the head organizers of that. Get this. On the official Twitter page for the Women's March, a cop killer who ended up on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list, a woman named Asada Shakur, was wished happy birthday back on July 16th. Now, this is going to be a big topic today on HBR, and I'm sure my fellow panelists and viewers shall help me list the other things Linda Sarsour has directly or indirectly been involved in. But to conclude this particular summary, I'd like to quote Courtney Love. And the one thing that she's ever said that I agree with. She's using fake stories to generate sympathy and collect money under the mask of women's rights and solidarity. Linda, you're a vile disgrace to women and all mankind. Now, before I hand this off to my panelists, I forgot to include this other thing, but I figured it'd be appropriate. To quote Celebrity Skin, and to describe Linda Sarsour. She is a walking study in demonology. Brian?
Well, I also want to throw in there, too, the person who wrote the article for Glamour magazine that essentially, was the person who selected Linda Sarsour as Woman of the Year, is the woman who helped build Jezebel. I can't remember her name at the top of my head. I will get it right now. But this is the person who created Jezebel, Anna Holmes. So
No.
Oh yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? But here's the thing. I know, and this is something that I wanted to bring up, and this is why I chose this story. I know that there are people who would make the argument that Linda Sarsour's politics, Linda Sarsour's identity politics, or her beliefs are not feminist in any way. I would argue they are. I would argue that she's absolutely right when she says this is a feminist religion, because feminism preys on the fear and insecurity of women to get power. And Islam works the same way. The whole idea that a woman has to dress in a burqa to protect herself from the rapey men that she is surrounded by is a feminist belief. She's not lying. And what makes me upset is the people who argue against feminists that come from the right, and I see this all the time, they use Islam as their means to combat feminism. They say, well, look, feminists are supporting Islam, and that's wrong because Islam is bad for women, right? This is like a specific issue. But they don't understand how feminism works. Islam and feminism are completely compatible because they use the fear of women and their desire for security to build the religion that protects them by putting them in burqas and essentially making sure that they're always escorted by some guy and all that. It's completely compatible. It's not even crazy. Now, what the reason why it obsessed me is because I think the right gets it wrong. They're so wrong about that, and they also remove women's agency because some of the most influential people within Islam and within Sharia are the women themselves. So they're the ones that sort of socially enforce this stuff. They're the ones that when they bring them out, like, I mean, I've seen countless interviews with women that are part of the Islamic State, and I'm talking about the places that are ruled by Sharia specifically, and they come on in the full burqa hijab outfit, and they defend their right to wear it as though they think that this is like important to them. It protects them. It helps them feel safe. They get treated like princesses and all that. Well, that's their perspective. The problem is the right gets that wrong all the time. Now, and the reason why it annoys me is that they were shown that the truth is that is feminism. That is where feminism leads. Like that's the only place it can go, is full-on Sharia law, like everybody covered up. If they face that reality, then you can see feminism for what it really is. It's all about just it's just all it is gynocentrism and putting women's security and safety before everything else and holding women to extremely low standards before everything else under all circumstances. That's how you end up with Sharia. Because they basically say, well, we need to protect the women. So how do we do that? Well, we dress them in burqas. Why? Because the men are the problem. So
is it not true? Is it not true that feminism hurts women too? Are we not agreed on that rather obvious truth? It hurts them in a very different way to the way it hurts men. It takes away men's rights and it takes away women's agency. Mm-hmm. And can we surely say the same thing about Islam? I mean, a few centuries down the road, it takes away women's rights as well, but it starts by taking away their agency. Both feminism and Islam hurts men and women, but in different ways.
Yeah.
Apparently saying that it's bad in those ways, apparently saying that it does these things and it hurts more people than the people trying to use
twice as many
are talking about. Twice as many people. That's promoting it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that really blows my mind about the discussion on Islam is that when you say it also hurts men, saying something hurts men is taken as a promotion of it. What does that tell you about men's position in our society? Everybody talks about women being oppressed, but if you say something hurts men, you get accused of promoting it. All right. If men's position in society was really better than women's position in society, if people valued men more, if people cared more about men, saying something hurts them would never, ever be taken as you're promoting this. You want this to increase. You're clearly you're for this because you said it hurts men. Like, really? Really? How can you possibly make that argument and then turn around and argue that women are oppressed and men are privileged? Nobody's really been able to explain that to me from a standpoint of arguing that. You know, I've had people be able to explain it to me from a standpoint of opposing it, but nobody's been able. Nobody that makes those arguments together, or makes those arguments at separate times from the same mouth or the same keyboard, has ever been able to explain how they are compatible.
And you just can't. Again, going back to what I was saying, the right pisses me off with the way they address Islam, because they consistently white knight for women in the Middle East. Essentially, they white knight for them as though they are not part of that problem. Okay, the ideology of Islam is the problem. Not the men there, not the women there, the ideology. And the men and the women there that support it, they reinforce it. So, and you have to ask yourself, like, those people are not completely different organisms. They have a lot of the same biological, evolutionary drives that drive the rest of us. And one of those is to protect the women and to sacrifice the men. They do it just like we do. They have different reasons for it. So if we understand that we're not that different from them, and we understand that the ideology is the problem, then we understand that those women are not necessarily deserving of white knighting in the same way that that in any more of a way than the men do. There are probably a lot of men and women living under Islam, under Sharia law, that don't want to live there, that don't want to be there, that are trying to get out. But we have to recognize that it's both genders that are dealing with that. And the problem is not the people, it's the ideology.
Wait. Brian, I want to make sure I get this correct. So you're saying that we're not supposed to criticize the men or the women, we're supposed to criticize the ideology.
Yes, of course.
Right. Well, but wait, that's not possible, because whenever you criticize Islam, you immediately are criticizing Muslims, which makes you racist.
Yes, yes, of course. And who are the people who do that? Linda Sarsour. These are the people who use that, And yeah, look, I get that because I know that there are people who would say, the people on the right who don't understand where I'm coming from. They think, well, if feminism is equality, let's assume that that's the way it plays out. Then that means that, these women are not being treated equal. Well, there's a lot of things that you're doing that's way too simple. One is you're not actually measuring the problems on both sides of the balance beam, as it were, in the Middle East. You have to look at what the men also have to deal with. Secondly, if you're just talking about like gender equality or whatever the fuck that means, or you're talking about the issues facing women and men institutionally or whatever, then you can look at that. But I don't think you need to call it, you don't have to use the word feminism. That's not necessary at all, because that's a whole other animal. That's an industry. That's an ideology all the same. For example, the religion of Islam in the Middle East could be called the religion of rubber baby buggy bumpers, for all I care. The thing that matters is what they're doing. So if what's happening under the religion of rubber baby buggy bumpers is bad for women and bad for men in certain ways, then I would say we need to reform rubber baby buggy bumpers to change it. So it's all about, like, what are the things that are bad and what are the things that are good, and what do we take out? That's the reason why I think that people use the word feminism, but it's not important. Like, do you care about women or not? Do you care about men's issues and women's issues in these parts of the world or not? Can we talk about them honestly? So when Linda Sarsour goes after Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who, I admire a great deal, and even though Ayaan Hirsi Ali herself uses she throws the word feminist around too as a way. I think it's like it's being used as like a poker chip or like a chess piece to try to like counter or checkmate feminists by saying, but if you're a feminist, da da da, you know. But I don't. I think that's your play. Don't play in their game, is what I'm saying. You know, if Ayaan Hirsi Ali just says, you know what, you're right. This is feminism. This is where it goes. This is, I'll show you how they're the same. And you connect them. You say, this is how feminism is similar to Islam. This is how Islam is similar to feminism. This is where feminism inevitably heads, which is towards Islam. You show that and you expose it for what it is. And then they have nothing to play with. Nothing. So they like, even the coffee shop feminists will be like, well, shit, I thought it was about equality, but apparently it's about burqas. So why not? I mean, that's like this thing will never, like, this is just like this back and forth about, you know, what is feminism and where is it necessary? It's like this endless battle that never has, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually, you have to basically say, yeah, you're right. Islam is the most feminist religion. Absolutely. And then that's it. What are they going to do? Where do they go from there? The women are not going to be okay with it once you tell them, yeah, so you're going to have to wear this now because we need to protect you from these guys. You know?
Yeah, you might look at the fact that Islamic women have to wear hijabs, and you might conclude that this can only possibly be the result of men enforcing this law against women's wishes. But again, we're talking about Linda Sarsour here. She advocates for the hijab, and she doesn't live under Sharia. She lives in rather a free country, and judging by her accent, she's lived there for her whole life. But here she is saying the hijab is a symbol of women's empowerment. No one's forcing her to say this. And you can say, well, she's obviously brainwashed if you want to sound like Cenk Uygur. But from where I'm sat, it looks like she's the one doing the brainwashing, male gaze and objectification and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know what really pisses me off about that, Mike, is what she's saying inadvertently by wearing that the hijab is that men are predisposed to
they're animals.
They're animals, and that women have to do this to try and divert their predatory instincts, supposedly. Yeah. And that pisses me off more than anything. You know what? There are so many other women around the world that have done such great things this past year that you could have gone for in terms of Woman of the Year. What about Jodie Cantor? You know, the woman that broke the story about Harvey Weinstein's sexual antics and has brought forward a whole bunch of women within the Hollywood and around the world, encouraged them to come out and say, hey, I've been sexually harassed. Let's try and put some of these jerk-offs behind bars. Or how about this? What about the women in Saudi Arabia who are at the forefront of trying to get women the right to drive around their goddamn country? Those are the types of women that I personally inspired by, that I think are actually leading the way in terms of trying to garner, you know, rights for women, trying to
on that. I just want to throw a shout out to Focus Break Habib, because I know that Habib has been working really hard to get women to be able to drive in Saudi Arabia. So if you are part of that, which I'm going to assume that you at least on some level were, good man. Okay, but anyway.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it. It's just like, isn't the whole point for us to be able...
No, I think this is the thing when it comes to like these like Women of the Year things. Honestly, I think that it's more important that you are a feminist while you're doing something mediocre than you're a woman who doesn't care or wouldn't want to be called a feminist while doing something great.
Exactly.
The Woman of the Year award is actually quite insulting. It would be they've always had the Man of the Year award, and it's always been done, you know, in response to greatness, actual achievement. Actual benefit to society, something along those lines. And they could have made it Person of the Year. They don't have to have somebody of each sex. And the only reason to have Man of the Year and Woman of the Year be separate
is because men would be Men of the Year more often, probably.
Yeah, if women can't compete in that arena, if women do not do equally great things to men. So just having the award itself is an admission that women would not win if they had just Person of the Year like that. Yeah. That's the first thing. Of course, the second thing is it's being used in this manner, which is really piddly. Like, it's not really being used to promote accountability, greatness, achievement, benefit to society. It's not being used to promote any of the things that make a person great. It's being used to promote an ideology of ownership of women, a political ideology that says this particular brand of collectivism that treats gender as a class issue owns women, and women have to kowtow to it, and women have to accept its premises and everything that is promoted in its name. And that's being promoted by this. So you can't even be treated artificially as if you've achieved greatness as a woman without being owned by a political ideology. Now, I want to respond to a couple of other things here too. Linda Sarsour is not a Sharia apologist. She promotes it. She is trying to get it adopted in the United States in various ways. And it's not like she's just out and out saying, well, the United States should become a Sharia state. No, she's just talking about how great it is and how much benefit women get from it and how you can be free from this constraint or this burden and so on, like interest on your credit card and stuff like that, without telling the whole story. Because usually nobody's going to loan you money without making money from the loan. So you're going to pay it up front instead. It's still interest, right? But she's doing that, and she's advocating as if it is an attack on Islam for states to have laws that say judges in those states use American law to make their decisions in American courts.
Can I just, I just want to say something to that really fast, because this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Linda Sarsour is a woman promoting Sharia law. That is not unusual. In Middle Eastern countries where Sharia law is the law, I would guarantee you the majority of the people who are supporting Sharia law, who I wouldn't say enforce it, but they encourage it socially and culturally, are the women that live there. And Linda Sarsour is not
it's always the women that shepherd this stuff in.
Yes.
It's always the women that shepherd in.
Linda Sarsour is basically a microcosm of that. Okay, Hannah, go ahead.
It's always the women that shepherd in authoritarian control over people's interpersonal relationships. It's always the women that shepherd in authoritarian control over people's personal choices. Things that are considered vices, those are there's laws related to those vices. All of the vices, all the blue laws, are things that women have fought for. Even like, I'm not promoting drunk driving here. I think it's a really stupid thing to do. I was in a car that was in an accident with a drunk driver, almost killed my mother. But I'm going to say I disagree with continually lowering the blood alcohol level in order to criminalize.
Yeah, Hannah?
Lower and lower.
You're breaking up. Okay.
It's my internet.
It's okay.
I'm kind of tracking it. It's the computer itself. It's having these pauses, and I don't know why. What's going on with it? Because I looked in my settings and I looked in everything that I have in a menu here, and it doesn't tell me what's going on. So it might be updating something, and there's no notification or anything for it.
Okay.
I don't know. But in any case, regarding the drunk driving thing, Mothers Against Drunk Driving has fought and fought and fought to get that criminalized level of blood alcohol content level closer and closer to your body's natural blood alcohol content. And your body naturally often has alcohol in your blood, a very minute amount. But your blood alcohol level is measured in very minute amounts.
Hannah?
0.03 or whatever. It's not abnormal to have something like 0.03 in your blood after a heavy meal. Even if you didn't drink. You can have that from cough syrup. And they're working their way, they're talking their way towards that. So women do this. And until men start figuring out that women's freak out every time something doesn't go the way women want it to go does not justify making new laws controlling people's behavior, and that they need to look at all of the facts around a topic, and they need to look at all of the
Yeah.
The potential implications of new laws, we're going to end up in this situation where women constantly shepherd in new authoritarian systems, new authoritarian powers, and continually squeeze society like this. We will have prohibition after prohibition after prohibition, and we will have dictatorship masquerading as democracy over and over again. Don't put up with that.
But Hannah, we need somebody to think of the children, okay?
Yeah, they're not thinking of the children. They're thinking of how upset they get.
Right.
Yeah. But, I mean, the children makes for a handy shield, though, when you're... Because
always.
It's all about, essentially, how do we live in a world where no one ever gets into an accident ever? Well,
and that's just not going to happen.
No, there is no such place. This is unfortunately what you have to deal with when you live in.
Can you imagine an entire country of Helen Lovejoys? Oh no, wait a minute, that's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, this is the thing. You cannot prevent everything. Okay.
No.
There isn't probably anything in your life, Brian, that you could look at and say, I can trace my cancer back to this specific thing, and I'm 100% certain that was the cause.
Right. There's no way. No. I don't want to live in the Demolition Man future.
Right.
I respect people's right to be assholes. And
same thing with me. When I had encephalitis, there was no way to predict that was going to happen to me. I got bit by a mosquito, and it was carrying bacteria or a virus that infected me, and I got very, very sick and almost died. There was no way to avoid that.
Yeah.
There are times when things like shit like this happens. There's no way to avoid it, okay? It's just you deal with it. And this idea of being, nerfing the world. You can't nerf the world. It's just not going to happen. And the more women try to nerf the world, the more you give up your human rights when you put up with it.
I wanted to throw in a couple things real quick. One, I noticed that the Twitch chat is pretty lit. So if you guys could go over there, I understand that it's way more stable, and show me some love in the Twitch chat by putting in some of those unique to Twitch emotes in the comment section. I want to see some of those goofy little Twitch faces like Lemmys and shit. Valeria Deneva sends us a comment as well. But Max, I'll let you go ahead and say what you're going to say first.
I want to see hashtag make love to me, Max, trending in the chat over there too.
Valerita Deneva says something. She says, at Honey Badger Radio and at Dr. Randomcam. She says, TFM, I don't know what TFM stands for, had the opinion that the feminists promoting / defending Islam is because Muslims are the only group that didn't fail their shit test. Thoughts? Who's TFM?
Total frat move is the first thing that's come. Oh, that's a college humor thing. No, no idea what TFM is.
Turd flinging. Oh, turd flinging monkey.
Many.
Turd flinging.
Oh,
monkey.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it TFM? Okay, it's not too fucking many because it wasn't the next word after that. Two FM people have.
No, yeah. Turd flinging monkey had the opinion that feminists that are promoting or defending Islam do so because Muslims are the only group that did not fail their shit test. I mean, it's it's possible, but though we want to know your thoughts.
It is possible. That is possible.
I mean, we didn't essentially, do what kind of environment? Oh, I love these fucking emotes here. What kind of environment would you need to be under where? Because remember, lots of countries in the Middle East didn't have Sharia until recently. When I say recently, like since what, the 70s or whatever. So something changed there.
Think about it this way, okay? They have a lifestyle that is much more. It's much closer to a traditional. It's not like our traditionalism, or even the straw traditionalism that modern traditionalists hearken back to, that didn't exactly really exist, except in a few rare cases of people having money to do it. But their culture actually does involve women ruling the household to a degree where men are the breadwinners and they're out in the world, and it's women who influence the children during their tender years when they're most impressionable. And if you are in a money situation there, it's a house full of women. It's not just one man, one woman. it's a really gynocentric environment. And they probably, especially with women raising women to promote these ideas. But of course, they're going to raise their sons. It's women there that raise their sons to believe these things. And it's on you to protect your female family members. And they probably do the same thing to all of the men that are not in their family that Western society does to all of the men of their religion. Those men are going to rape our women. Those guys in that other family, those guys in that other tribe, we gotta be protected from them. You have to go blow yourselves up because those Jewish men might come rape our women. You have to blow yourselves up because that other Muslim tribe that isn't part of our group is going to come rape our women. The opposing political viewpoint, they're going to come rape our. We're in danger from all around. You got to protect us, and that's how they teach them from a time when they're little kids. And I don't care what culture you're in. The person who puts a cool cloth on your forehead when you have a fever, the person who feeds you every day, that line in the crow, "Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children." There's a reason for that. That level of dependence and emotional attachment and bonding that takes place. The person who nurses you when you're an infant is going to have a huge amount of influence during your childhood on what you believe. So, of course, the women are going to herald this in, and they're going to enforce it. They're going to enforce it by teaching it to their children when their children are very small. And they'll raise them in this belief system all of their lives. This is 100% a female-controlled environment, and no matter how much we hear about what the men do, and I'm not saying the men don't write their laws and the men don't enact penalties and stuff like that. What I'm saying is they do what they were taught when they were children. Who taught them? Now, yeah, they're capable of growing up and figuring things out for themselves. But by the time they grow up,
yeah, I'm waiting with bated breath. Did Hannah drop off?
You just got to count the seconds until she comes back, so we can tell her how much we've missed.
Hannah, Hannah, your sound is pretty. You're pretty bad.
less.
Okay, Hannah, are you back?
I don't think she can hear us either. She may have to reset. So we got 48 people on Twitch. Oh, there she is. Wait, she's still talking. We got 48 people on Twitch. That's lit as fuck, guys. You have no
Awesome.
idea. I'm hoping that we can get more people on.
Okay, Hannah, we missed everything after by the time they grow up.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah, your whole thing just. It was like you said, by the time they grow up, and then it was silent, and I was like, oh shit, she's pausing for effect.
No, by the time they grow up, it's done.
Yeah.
In their mind, it's in their heads. They're not going to change. This is something that people don't realize. Yeah, you have the capacity, right? You have the capacity to look around you as an adult and make your own decisions. But by the time you grow up, your moral outlook on life is set. And it is very hard to change. It can take decades to change that. If you're going to develop a prejudice in your life against another group of people, you develop it normally in your childhood. And you develop it because the people around you taught it to you. These are things that it's a lot more work. It's a ton more work to learn to treat the people around you as human beings after you grow up than it is to grow up and treat them as human beings because that's what you were taught when you were a child. So, the idea that women don't have any control over this, the idea that this is men imposing this on women, that goes out the window when you know that the people who are raising children in that environment and teaching their children their religious beliefs and teaching their children their beliefs about society are the women.
Yep.
It's something a lot of atheists have noticed and been rather baffled by, especially quote unquote progressive atheists, is that the majority of atheists seem to be men. The vast majority of people advocating for atheism are men. And that's because the majority of people advocating for religion are women. And this is super confusing for progressives because the progressive narrative is that religion hates women, all religions. So why on earth would women advocate for religion? It doesn't make sense, right? Well, it makes perfect sense when you realize that the progressive narrative is just another gynocentric religion. It's there to convince everyone that women are hated and men are not, and it's bollocks. The great irony being that the atheist movement is even more gynocentric than the gynocentric religion it's trying to escape. I'm holding out for a
Absolutely
non-progressive atheist movement. Perhaps it's not a coincidence that it's not happening. Maybe it's because men's rights are not happening. Eh?
And just to quickly build off of Random Cam's point, the majority of men are libertarians.
Yeah.
So the majority of libertarians are men, rather. Sorry.
The majority of libertarians are men. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, no, it's the
Karen
same.
explained.
It's the same thing though, because being. I think that pursuing libertarianism is risky. I mean, it's risky because it's socially unpopular, and the ideology itself. I don't know. Maybe ideology is not the right word for it, but that political position of wanting to be free to take the risk of living under a government that is as small and as least intrusive as possible is something that women generally find high risk. So because they're more concerned with security, so they tend to go for things that are going to be safer. So they put more faith in things like a bigger government. That's why women tend to vote Democrat. But there are a large number of Republican women, but even them, they're usually thinking about things like security. Libertarian women are unusual. That's why people like Julie Borowski stand out, because she's a bit unusual. The same thing, I think, applies to the atheist thing. I think that there was a time not long ago where being an atheist was kind of edgy, and it was out there, and it was like, whoa, you had problems with the Sky Daddy or whatever. And that was something that I think a lot of women would either not do actively, like not be outspoken about it because it's socially risky, or they genuinely believe that religion is better because it builds community, and they'd rather have community because community means that they have people that they can essentially go to. So it brings them security. It's more of a social, cultural security as opposed to a, institutional, administrative government security, but it's the same idea. So yeah, that's why I think there are more male libertarians and why there are more male atheists, or at least outspoken ones. And of course, the moment when I think of female atheists that have essentially, entered that sphere, I think about the ones that essentially bring religion with them, like Rebecca, guys, word to the wise, don't do that, Watson, and Lacey Green. So.
I would say part of it has to do with women being so rules oriented. And I mean, that goes clear back. It manifests in early childhood, where when you're in the first grade, the kids constantly having to be told, don't be a tattletale, are the girls. Okay, you don't have to say that to the boys most of the time, because if the boys have a conflict, they'll wrestle it out or duke it out or whatever, and then it's over and done with. But the girls run to the teacher every time. And that continues throughout life.
That's more like authority oriented, right? They're more likely to go to authority,
though. Not just authority. Like, girls have a tendency, like a guy comes along, he's like, all right, problem presents itself to him. He will look at the problem, he will look at the situation, he will analyze the situation, he will analyze the problem, and then he will come up with a solution. And if an instruction or an available resource presents itself, he will use that. But if he doesn't have one, the male tendency is to figure something out anyway, or to come up with a workaround. A lot of girls either don't do that or never learn to do that. The first thing they look for is a set of instructions or a resource. And when something doesn't present itself, then they have a period of, oh, I'm going to freak out now for a while. And eventually the tendency is they'll ask people for help. And if they can't get any of those things and they're desperate enough, then they might try a workaround or to come up with their own solution. It's the last thing they do, not the first thing they do. It's one of the things that used to, and this is something I grew up noticing, and it pissed me off about other girls, and I had a rough time hanging out with other girls because we would have something like that happen, and their first response was, what are the rules? What constraints are we working in? And for me, it was, how do we accomplish this thing that we're trying to accomplish? And it's not really compatible. Okay, that's a big difference between like people who grow up in a situation where they learn their own accountability, and people who grow up in a situation where they learn that there is always somebody who is accountable for them. And unfortunately, society has a tendency to teach girls the latter rather than the former.
Sec, by the way,
I don't.
Go ahead. Hannah? Hello?
Danger.
She's getting cut off again. Something's going on with her computer. Hannah, stop downloading porn.
Sound like she said danger.
Say,
Danger, Will Robinson.
girl.
You just got to remember the last thing she said so we can cue her up from that bit again.
Yeah. What did she say last?
I don't.
Okay. Well,
You guys lost me again, didn't you?
yeah, we did. Yeah, you dropped. It was like, last thing you said was, I don't.
Which was the first thing you said.
Well, okay, we'll go back to this. Religion, I don't consider religion to be a bad thing. It's not evil. It's not dangerous in and of itself. It's just a thing, okay? Just like any other rule set that you can add to your life. But it can be used as a layer between the person and the person's accountability.
Yeah.
And girls are more likely to apply it that way. Women are more likely to apply it that way. And it's not necessarily a women to say that. Did you lose me again?
No, he said it's not necessarily a, and then yeah.
Okay, it's a criticism of women, but it's not a demonization of women to say that. Okay,
Sure.
But they are more likely. Women are more likely to use it as a substitute, as a cushion to prevent themselves from being treated with accountability. Men are more likely to look to religion as a guide on how to exercise their accountability. And so when you run into a faithful religious man, he'll follow rules until they contradict themselves so badly that he can't, in terms of religion. He'll follow rules based on what he thinks that he can do to benefit society as a man, what he's going to achieve and accomplish for his community and his family. Women will turn religion into a witch hunt. And not that this is across the board, all women are one way and all men are the other way. But that's been my experience. Good women in religion don't use it to control things like the men's rights movement or feminism or the atheist community or whatever. I consider feminism itself a religion. So when
it absolutely is. And
a religious idiot.
Yes, Hannah. Shit.
Most bizarre thing.
She's still dropping. We should, Hannah, when you
It's
get
the computer.
Yeah. If you, we should move on because we've only done one story and it's already been an hour. But I'm gonna wait until you're back. Real quick, I'm gonna read.
Guys, can you?
Hello? What?
No, we can't.
No, we can't hear you.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking.
I'm gonna drop for a minute because
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
restart my. I'm gonna restart my computer.
Come on back. I'm just gonna start the next story. And
Okay.
Before I do, well, go ahead. Yeah, we'll see you in a bit. Hopefully this will work. So Cyberzerk, while we were talking about all this stuff, Cyberzerk gave us 100 secs. Pause for effect. And he says the Islamization of the world will be as peaceful as its Christianization. At least I hope. But I don't think that. I don't know that it's gonna work out that way, my friend. But let's hope that is not the case. So I still have Mike and Max with me, so I'm gonna go ahead and get into the next story. Massachusetts Senate trying to kill due process on college campuses. By Andrew G. Thank you, Andrew, for the write-up. In the wake of Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos's decision to rescind the Obama-era Title IX guidelines, individual states have been making attempts to codify into law the Obama administration's 2011 Dear Colleague letter. The Massachusetts State Senate last week approved a measure called, quote, an act relative to sexual violence on college campuses, end quote. The scariest part of this bill calls for the use of preponderance of evidence standard to resolve Title IX complaints. With this standard, people accused of sexual assault on college campuses can easily be found guilty by campus kangaroo courts, which is basically what we have now. At a minimum, a standard of clear and convincing would be much more appropriate as the burden of proof is shifted away from the accused student. Here are some other concerning points and analyses from this measure. Quote, these are the sub points. So, there may be restrictions on evidence considered by the fact finder, including but not limited to the use of evidence of prior sexual activity or character witnesses, end quote. The limiting of evidence is a potential respondent can use is always scary. Exculpatory evidence should always be allowed, even if it paints the complainant in a bad light. Another concerning point is, quote, the reporting party and the responding party shall not be allowed to directly question each other during disciplinary proceedings, end quote. One of the greatest legal protections that we have in the United States is the ability to question our accuser. While campus tribunals are not criminal courts, a student may be facing criminal allegations. Many students have policies in place that allow a respondent to question his or her complainant via a third party. However, this measure does not force schools to allow a respondent to indirectly question the complainant. Another concerning point is, quote, if an institution offers an appeal as a result of procedural errors, previously unavailable relevant evidence that could significantly impact the outcome of a case or where the sanction is disproportionate to the findings, the reporting party and the respondent shall be provided with an equal opportunity to appeal decisions regarding responsibility or sanctions. The most concerning point with regards to this paragraph is the use of the word if. The if in this statement, and just so you know, this is the beginning of the statement where it says, if an institution offers an appeal as a result of procedural errors. The if in this statement implies that a university does not necessarily need to offer the chance for someone to appeal a Title IX ruling. Unfortunately, this statement is consistent with the interim Title IX guidance from the Department of Education that states, quote, if a school chooses to allow appeals from its decisions regarding responsibility and or disciplinary action, quote, if a school chooses to allow appeals from its decisions regarding responsibility and or disciplinary sanctions, the school may choose to allow appeal, one, by solely by the responding party, or two, by both parties, in which case any appeal procedures must be equally available to both parties, end quote. By not having a chance to appeal a ruling, the complainant has no recourse against biased fact finders or tribunals. While there are many more concerning statements within this measure, these are the points that have stood out the most. So many colleges and universities have been subjected to lawsuits because they have botched Title IX investigations. Passing these measures will only continue to give ammunition for lawsuits to students who have been wrongly expelled because of campus kangaroo courts. So I know it's kind of like, it's a bit, there's a lot of legalese and some dense shit going in there. For those of you guys who are watching, we do have a link to the Patreon page, which has a link to the show notes, of which is the PDF that shows the Department of Education, sexual misconduct stuff. So you can look at it yourself, as well as several other sources, which are in the Patreon page, which is basically where our sources are at. So somebody wanted to say something to that?
To all the legislators out there, particularly the ones in Massachusetts, repeat after me, okay? The 1 in 5 number isn't true, okay? It's not true. The proof is in the fucking pudding. Wait, look, let me just explain this to you all very succinctly if there's any chance that there are any legislators listening to Honey Badger Radio right now, okay? You know that 1 in 5 statistic? The way they came up with that, it was in a study where, okay, this is the best way to put it, all right? There are 2 separate studies done regarding campus sexual assault, right? One study included the factor of both parties engaging in intoxicated sex, right? And under the more progressive definitions, quote unquote progressive, that if somebody is intoxicated, specifically the woman, that the woman isn't able to give consent in that particular regard, right? One study included the factor of intoxication, and the other one didn't. The one that included it got the 1 in 5 number. The one that didn't got 1 in 53. That's a very big fucking difference, right? And that's exactly the reason why people like us are advocating for due process to remain the particular standard, whether it's within the courts or on campus. It's because the way that you pursue this issue changes dramatically, and it should change dramatically if you got a number that ranges anywhere between 1 in 5 to 1 in 53. Just get that through your thick fucking skulls.
Well, it may not matter, because if the when it comes to the schools or any institution, they're probably more concerned with just having the power to control, their students to this degree. And also, another thing is that if this is, obviously we know the 1 in 5 is bullshit, but if this is the popular narrative that's circulating, it's really, really hard to undo that damage that has been done by it. Furthermore, and we've said this before when it comes to this whole Title IX false rape accusation business, kangaroo courts, colleges and universities they care a lot more about their reputation than they do their students. So if a student is accused, they don't want it to turn into a big media circus. They want to handle it internally and quietly, so that it doesn't hurt their reputation. So they will quickly expel. They want to get through the process as fast as possible, and they don't care if they have to throw this kid under the bus, because they just want to get it over with. So a lot of times this is what they want, because if you take away the university's power to essentially become a courthouse full of activists, by the way, because we already know what kind of people work at these universities. If you take that away from them, then the people in the university that care about the university's flow of essential income, which is dependent on their reputation, they will have to face the potential blowback of that if a scandal comes out. And then the activists that work there, the professors, they'll they won't have the feminist utopia they want in their university, which is essentially where every time a girl screams, he touched me, or he said something, or he stared at me through a window, or whatever, we should just immediately castrate this kid. If they don't get their way, then this is not going to work out for any of the people at the university. So they want this control. This is what they want. This is the power they want. Also, as an aside, remember, this is Massachusetts. This is where Brianna Wu is running for office.
Oh, God. Why'd you have to remind me of that?
This is what she wants, too, right? So Hannah's back, and she sounds better.
I gotta remind everybody a few things, to start with. Okay, we're in the United States. There's not just one constitutional amendment dedicated to your right to due process of law if you are accused of a crime. The Fourth Amendment protects against illegal search and seizure. So the state cannot gather evidence against you illegally in such a way that the evidence should be in doubt and then treat it as if it's not. You have the Fifth Amendment giving you the right to a jury trial, or the grand jury, at laying out that you cannot be subjected to double jeopardy, laying out that you cannot be forced to incriminate yourself. The words due process are placed in that one. That one actually provides that you cannot be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentiment or indictment of grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in a time of war or public danger. No person can be subject to the trial for the same offense twice. You can't be compelled to witness against yourself, and you can't be deprived of life, liberty, in other words, incarcerated, or property, in other words, fined, without due process of law. No private property shall be taken for public use without just compensation. So that's your main due process one. But then it goes on. The Seventh Amendment goes over common law suits. The Sixth Amendment provides for a jury trial in criminal prosecutions and the right to confront your accuser, the right to a lawyer. The Eighth Amendment protects against excessive bail or fines and cruel and unusual punishment. Our forefathers considered this to be the most important thing. They have more dedicated to this in our Constitution, I think, than anything else in terms of, and like the constitutional, the Bill of Rights, that was not, and these amendments, that was not to dictate what the government is allowed to do and limit the people. That was intended to dictate the limits on government. You can't do these things as a government. You can't take these things away from people as a government. This government is not allowed to do these things. And what gynocentrism has done over and over again in the United States, from at least Prohibition on, and there may be earlier examples that I'm not thinking of, but at least from Prohibition on, feminist agitation, gynocentric female agitation, on various things, including the feminist outlook on intimate partner and sexual violence, has done a terrible disservice to society by creating a false conflict between due process rights and public safety. There is no level of epidemic of crime in the United States that justifies infringing on due process rights for the accused. I don't care if it's 1 out of 1 women, 1 out of 1 men being subjected to sexual violence. If everything feminists said about sexual violence was true, it still wouldn't outweigh whatever your constitutional and your human right to have the facts and the reality of this situation be the determining factors in whether or not you personally face penalties, conviction and penalties once you have been accused.
Inalienable rights.
It's
inalienable.
Inalienable, exactly. And this is something that has been going on, like I said, for at least a century, at least since Prohibition, probably earlier. And we have seen something absolutely horrible happen with our medical rights in the United States because people have accepted this. We have an area of medicine in which our government is exempt from the very medical privacy rights they impose. You know, that they impose protective measures against being violated, not just on high-level practitioners, but someone as low as I am. I have less training in some areas than a nurse's aide. You get 3 weeks as a nurse's aide. I get 2 weeks. I'm MedPass certified. But if I said one of my clients' names on the air and then described a detail about the care that I provide to that client, I'd be in violation of the law. But your local prosecuting attorney, your local DA can dig through your medical records to find out what medicines you're taking and determine that you are addicted to pain medicine if you've been taking it for a long time because you have a chronic pain disorder, and criminalize you receiving medical treatment for that chronic pain, and criminalize your doctor providing that treatment, even if no damage has been done. This is the danger that we are facing because of this gynocentric outlook on this situation, that protecting women from any risk, from any potential suffering, outweighs the human rights of the entire country. Your human right to not be incarcerated or otherwise punished because somebody made a mistake or lied. That has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
The brakes have to be put on that train, because if we don't, we are all in serious danger.
It's time to stop. It's time to stop, okay?
Cyberberserk gave us 50 secs and says, Doge, sex, SEKs, are Swedish crowns. I hope you appreciate it. My feminist government will probably send me to the gulag just for watching HBR. Well, I hope that you don't get caught, but you know what? Just tell them that you are with the religion of peace, and I'm sure that they will not only not send you to the gulag, but they'll probably send the people who came to get you to send you to the gulags. You just got to know how to play your cards, man.
The gulag of peace.
Yes, that's right. All right. If there's nothing else, we're going to the next story. So those of you guys who are, if you want to know if your state is trying to rescind or, push back on this stuff, you should look into it. See if your state is involved, and if they are, write letters to your people and get your friends to do the same. All right. Polish teens restore some faith in humanity. By Mike J. Thank you, Mike. A CCTV camera captures an ominous scene unfold in Nysa, Poland. I hope I'm pronouncing Nysa right. It's Nysa. In Nysa, Poland, after dark, 3 boys make their way towards a sleeping homeless man, and just when you think the worst is about to happen, the 3 produce a blanket to help cover the man. The man thanks them for their kindness and offers them a hug as they part ways. The 3 teens, okay, these are Polish names, so I'm probably going to fuck them up. Simon, Wojciech, and Marcin, I think, said that they had met and befriended the homeless man earlier that day. When asked if they could do anything for him, the man requested a blanket. After finding someone throwing out old but still usable furniture, the 3 took a blanket and returned to give it to the man. One of the boys, Simon, was quoted as saying, quote, translated from Polish, "We took the quilt for this gentleman. We hugged him. Thank you very much." He smiled and went to sleep. "I am convinced that it was worth doing. If someone asks for help, we should give him a hand." End quote. After city guards spotted the boys doing their good deed on camera, the mayor of Nysa was notified. He met with the 3 to commend and reward them for their act of kindness. The mayor said, quote, "That's a big gesture. I bow to you. The world needs such gestures." End quote. The 3 boys were each given a smartwatch as thanks. What the hell is a smartwatch? It's also been reported that the homeless man is no longer homeless. So I just wanted to put, I always try to find some feel-good stuff, right?
Man, the Poles have just been killing it this year.
Yeah, right?
Like the fucking envy of the world. So these kids, kudos to you, man. For doing that, who knows what type of dire straits this homeless man may have been in. You giving him that blanket, that might have saved his life. That may have continued his life in such a way. It might have been such a positive influence to his soul that he was able to, like you said, Brian, to no longer be homeless. That's just wonderful.
Well, they drew attention to him, and probably someone came along and said, "Hey, here's a guy who doesn't have a place. Let's take him to a shelter. Let's help him out." And that's big. The blanket is a big deal simply because it can be a real risk. approaching someone who is homeless. You never know if you're dealing with someone who is just homeless or someone who has a mental health condition that is untreated and they've been abused, that compounds their perceptions of you as potentially harmful. So these guys did take a risk, and they engaged in, you know, human kindness and practical compassion. They gave him something that he was going to need to survive. And one of the biggest killers of homeless is they get hypothermia, and then their immune system doesn't fight off colds, and they get sick and they die. You know, another, of course, is suicide, and living under those conditions. You know, especially when you're dealing with cold and rain and people being nasty to you all the time, it leads to that. So, like, what these guys gave him, it wasn't just, you know, a blanket to keep him warm for the night. It was human contact and human compassion. And it's, you know, you kind of get choked up about that, because it's one of the neatest things that, you know, you see in guys. You just see a problem, then you got to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and they didn't, you know, they didn't have to do that, but they chose to. I think that's kind of huge. So kudos to them. And, you know, how you guys managed to resist caving into your toxic masculine ways and just, like, not just fucking him up and ass raping him. I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you did it.
What a bunch of xenophobic racists the Poles are, eh? Giving homes to the homeless when there are North African economic tourists out there who need a place to gang rape innocent Europeans. These bigoted Polacks are giving solace and salvation to their own people. Disgusting. Disgusting.
How dare they put their own first? How dare they?
Well, clearly these guys were raised by, you know, xenophobic parents.
Yes, clearly. By the way, Neela Possessed, who is one of our regular listeners, and I believe she's also in the area, she tells us, okay, Simon is pronounced Shimon. Their names are Shimon, Wojtek, and Marcian. So that's how you say those Polish ass names. I'm sure that it's probably like, just, you know, if they were here, they'd be like Simon, Martin, and Wojtek. Wojtek?
Well, what would happen is when they if their ancestors had immigrated to the United States, when they got to Easter Island, if somebody couldn't pronounce or spell their names, they would have got changed. That happened to a lot of people from a lot of nationalities, and it depended on the nationality of the person that was taking your name. So,
well, we have a big Polish neighborhood in Chicago. So, you know, Chicago's a really diverse city with a lot of different races or people from different nations, but they all tend to, like, cluster in various parts of the city because, holy shit, people self-segregate. I swear to God. But and I used to work in a paint store years ago, and it was like one of those interior paint stores where you get lots of contractors and stuff. And a lot of Polish guys would go in there that were like painters, and they were like first generation, like, you know, the English was their second language. They just came here off the boat, and they would have their Polish name, but they would, like, give me an American equivalent. So, you know, to their name that I would be, you know, asked to use. So there was this, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was like a long one, but he would just be like, call me Ed, you know, even though his real name was like something with a C and a Z at the end that was like mostly consonants and a few vowels. And then their kids would just have like American names because they would, like, you know, integrate within a generation. So,
and there's quite a bit around here as well. And so I learned things, like, for instance, I had a teacher with a 3-syllable name that ended in C, and it had several consonants in there. And it was like you had Plinsky, Chaplinsky, but I learned that LESCZCUCK. A person of Irish or Scottish background would be looking at that going, that's not pronounceable. It's Leschuk.
Leschuk.
LESCZCUCK. Leschuk. A local last name. Several around here, and in Pennsylvania as well. You know, there's a lot of Polish settlers in Pennsylvania, and a lot of different names that if you're not from from Poland or from any of the surrounding areas, you're clueless how to pronounce it. But the same thing happens between between them and other names that are not spelled that way as well. And there's names that have Gaelic roots that you look at the way they're spelled and it's difficult to pronounce them if you didn't grow up in that area either. And the same thing with Northern Europe, and the same thing with the Middle East. You're going to have that. What bugs me is that people get butthurt about it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, most people around here are like, well, not everybody knows how to pronounce my name. Okay. And I get people that pronounce my last name Whalen instead of Wallen because there's a Whalen Boulevard here in Dayton. This would be a stupid thing to get pissed off about. I'll tell them, hey, oh no, it's Wallen. It's got 2 L's, and then we just go on. A lot of people mispronounce or misspell my name. They leave the H off the end because of Hanna-Barbera. There's no H on the end of that Hannah, but it's a surname. This is just it's the way people are. It's how we deal with things.
Yeah, well,
we know what's familiar to us better than we know what's not familiar to us.
I appreciate people helping us out, but our names are weird, but that doesn't that makes it just more fun to try to figure out. So, okay, so unless there's anything else, I'm gonna go on to the last story. I will say, once again, good on you boys. I'm glad that I had something positive to talk about. I think this was a cute story, and Poland is killing it. To what Max is saying, they appear to be the beacons of morality right now, or at least when you want to find out what's good in the world and you need a little bit of light, just look and see what they're doing over there in the land of the Poles. So they seem to be doing pretty well. All right, last story. Bliss Jungle. Seattle Weekly has written about a Washington firefighter accused of rape. Dan Erlandson, the man in question, has not been charged with any crimes. His house, quote, the Bliss Jungle, has a unique decor, including a stripper pole, and has acted as a hub for self-described hippies to enjoy the West Coast ecstatic dance festival circuit and other musical events. Erlandson's events often had a sexy vibe, and he said in an interview with The Weekly that partygoers were encouraged to explore. Women began posting stories about Erlandson's sexual misconduct on social media, and some went to the police at the end of 2016. Erlandson admits to having sex with these women, now accusing him of rape. However, there was not enough evidence that shows a lack of consent to charge him. Erlandson responded to accusations on Facebook and spoke out about CC rape, or consent culture rape. He said, quote, when we are using words to communicate, the shared definition of those words is an absolute prerequisite to any actual communication. People who are self-positioning at the cutting edge of consent culture have adopted a new definition of what this word rape supposedly means. The Weekly article reads like a hit piece in its long, drawn-out narrative of the emotionally manipulative man that gaslights young and vulnerable women, looking so deep into Erlandson's past to recover petty crimes like being accused of stealing $10 from his fire hall. Gasp. The accusations themselves are a bit unconvincing. For example, one of his accusers interviewed admits to going to Bliss Jungle, enthusiastically taking off all of her clothes and participating in taking drugs with Erlandson to the point that she was so impaired that she couldn't speak or move. But Erlandson raping her wasn't the worst thing, she says. Oh no, the worst thing, by her admission, was the psychic attack, where she compromised some deep quality of her soul. However, despite Erlandson being an energy vampire, this is what they called him, many accusers felt attached to the community and that they didn't want to be the one to end the good times.
I remember back in 2002, the first time I listened to Limp Bizkit, I felt like there was a deep quality of my soul that was compromised. Can I accuse them of rape?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I'm suing 50 million. Fuck those guys.
this just blows my mind. Like that, it's for this to actually. If you'd have told me 20 years ago that something like this would be a mainstream news story with people using the phrase energy vampire in mainstream news and being taken seriously, I'd have passed out. I'd have been shocked. Energy vampire is a term that got ripped off from psychiatric treatment, where it applies as someone who is constantly making demands of you, in little increments until they get you to where they're mooching off of you entirely and taking up all of your time, and you're constantly, just basically belabored by this person's needs. That's an energy vampire. But if you go into the neo-pagan community, it's someone who it literally magically sucks your psychic energy out of you.
Yeah.
And it's, I would not have expected it to take this little amount of time for the public to take that seriously.
Well, let me remind you guys, this is happening in Seattle, Washington. In a place called the Bliss Jungle, which is essentially a house that was set up just for parties. And I was talking about this before we started the show years ago. I don't remember what year it was. It was in the 2000s sometime. I was feeling spontaneous. This is way before I got red pilled and all that, right? I was feeling spontaneous, and I decided on a whim to just go on a trip down to New Orleans for New Year's. I wanted to get out of the city, and I knew someone through social media that was an artist like me, and she said I could stay with her, and I said sure, right? And I got on a train, and I took a train down to New Orleans because I'd never been there, and I just wanted to do something crazy, so I went down there. And this place is essentially what the Bliss Jungle is. It was this house that a bunch of hippies were squatting in. They weren't paying rent there, or at least they were supposed to, but they weren't doing it. It was kind of like a bohemian commie paradise, right? Where no one paid for anything, but they insisted they should contribute. And they were just there doing drugs, listening to music, and fucking each other, and, throwing parties, right? And doing drugs. Did I mention the drugs? There was a lot of that going on. And this is the environment that they created that they wanted to live in. And they were also the same kind of people that, they were leftists. They were big, Marxist, communist, feminist types that were all living in this environment. And when I saw this story, my mind immediately went to that memory, because I spent the weekend with those people, and then I came right back to Chicago. I enjoyed New Orleans. The food was delicious, and I liked the music. But I was like, I will never want to live in a place like this again. It was filthy, and the girls that were there were hot, but they were nasty. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was like moldy locks, and they were there playing with dancing with hula hoops and shit. Like that was what they did all weekend, was get high and then hula hoop dance. And I couldn't wait to get out. And they actually had a dog that was there. That was the best dog. I wanted to take the dog back because I thought the dog was in trouble. Like I was like, oh shit, I should rescue this animal, but I can't. And when I see this though, I think of the same environment. Like this is an environment that was created by this person. He was like, I want to make a party hub. He was essentially a fireman in training, and he was in his 50s. Well, he is in his 50s, and he set this party house up, and all these people came there, and there were women, and they went there and they got high and they danced on stripper poles, and some of them were dancers for a living, and they had sex with him. And, and when they were doing drugs, they knew what they were doing. Like, these were drugs that, they knew how powerful they were and, what they can do. And they did it anyway. This is all willing stuff. So I thought I had to mention my experience because I've seen what this environment is like. And it's extremely hedonistic, and there's massive opportunities for shit to happen. But it's often, if not almost, it's very often consensual. So this is just something I wanted to point out.
The contradiction that feminists and progressives have kind of created regressives have created in this situation when they're talking about people's sex lives and defining rape and all this. On one hand, you have the sexual revolution and this was largely pushed by feminists, the idea that sex is not very different from other types of recreation and affection, that it doesn't create a bond or a connection that should be considered, harmful to break and things. And so it can be done just casually with no ill effects, no repercussions, no nothing, as long as you don't get pregnant or you don't get a disease. You just, fucking move on. That idea is entirely incompatible, totally incompatible with the idea that it's the same impact on a person.
Yeah.
If they have sex with a person that they didn't mean to have sex with, as it is to have somebody beat you up and hold you down and force it on you. And it's like, you can't have it both ways, okay? Either this is no big thing to do with somebody and just move on. There's no connection, there's no bond, there's no deep intimacy or any of that in it. You just, fucking go. Or it is such a big deal that if you do it when you wouldn't have done it if you'd been more alert and aware, if you feel tricked into it, if you feel taken advantage of, it's devastating and your whole life is wrecked and you're going to have PTSD from it, as if you had been absolutely dominated and destroyed. You can't have it both ways. So, and this idea of, the changing definition of rape and people not being able to understand what it is and all this stuff, this has been under discussion for quite a while. I made a post about this like 4 years ago on Reddit. Somebody asked, what would be a good working definition of rape? What would be an appropriate way to describe this is what the offense is? And I had to sit and think about that. We're wanting to include all of the different ways in which you can have sex with somebody that's genuinely intimate. They want to include all anal, all oral, and all penis and vagina sex. Okay, so you simply write it out so that if there's going to be a special term for it, for the worst sexual offense, you're going to say this is the worst of all of the sexual offenses. Don't exclude any gender or sexuality of the individual for being considered a victim. Don't exclude any gender or sexuality of the individual for being considered a perpetrator. So, but you don't want to set it up so that it's, not something that can happen by accident. You don't want it to be something that can happen by accident or without the perpetrator knowing what they did. So you define it as the act by the perpetrator.
Hannah?
Oh, it was going so well.
I know! It was so stable. We lost her. Oh, there she is. Hannah? Yeah, you're cutting out pretty bad right now.
Use the app.
Is your computer doing something? Are you
of taking a measure?
Oh boy.
Does anyone remember the last thing she said?
No.
You probably have a lot more complex.
Yeah, she's still talking. And it's Muslims, yeah. Well, I'm gonna just respond to somebody asked, like, what do I mean by hot but nasty? Think of it like this, guys. It's like they appear to be more familiar with essential oils than soap. So
I actually, believe it or not, this came up with, who was I talking to? I think I was talking to my dad about. We were talking.
It's girls who don't want to bathe, but they want to smell nice.
Modern.
That's what it is.
Movies and movie stars. Yeah, this actually came up in a discussion between me and my dad. We were talking about the differences between modern movie stars and classic movie stars and women today and women in history and everything. And we had been talking about Goldie Hawn and her career and how it wouldn't have ever started today the way it started back then. Because she was a go-go dancer. and she made her own road. All these women in Hollywood that have complained about, you know, we were trapped, we were stuck, we were in this situation, we couldn't work if we didn't do these things. I don't hear Goldie Hawn having those same complaints. And it's not to say that everyone's got to be Goldie Hawn, but you compare her and her class and the fact that she did everything. She was an actress, she was a director, she was a producer, she was a writer, she did everything. She was a comedian.
Yep. We lost Hannah again. She was describing Goldie Hawn. Damn it. Sorry, Hannah. I don't know what's going on, but you're... Oh, God.
Do tune in for the blog talk upload, because we're recording all this locally, and I'll be able to piece this together, and you can hear what Hannah was saying.
She would be a cute girl. If she didn't mess herself up in public, she would be a cute girl. But she's not, because she did. That's hot but nasty. A girl that she'd be really attractive if she didn't act like herself and demonstrate to everybody that she has no common sense and might, you know, be dangerous to sleep with.
I fucked up, Mike. I forgot to record myself. I forgot about that. Shit.
It's all good. It's all good. I
haven't done this in a week, and I forgot about that extra step. I knew I was forgetting something. So
you're the only one I haven't heard go robo.
Well, yeah, I've been pretty stable, thankfully. But
apparently I'm the most unstable person here.
Yes, apparently so. Oh, and one other thing, somebody mentioned. I was talking about my experience at this fucking Slab City within New Orleans. They said you'd fuck them, but you'd wash your dick with bleach. No, I would not. It was one of those like where I was like, oh man, they're hot, but I'm sure there's a lot of crabs running around this building. Like, I didn't want to sleep in the beds there because I was pretty sure that you could get STDs, like, just from, like, you know, sharing the water faucet. So, I didn't look back. What I'm saying is I left and I didn't look back. That was not my cup of tea at all. But sometimes you don't know until you, like, go in there and you want to look around and see, and you're like, hey, you know what, I'm glad I live in a you know, climate controlled apartment that I pay for myself with hot and cold water, and I live on my own, and I have a job, and I like buy things with my own money, and the clothes are, you know, somewhat new. I like that. I'm okay with that. So
if there's anybody in the chat that's looking for an experience like this in the local Toronto area up here in Canada, just come by my house. Oddly enough, you know, like, place is called the Bliss Jungle. My place is called the Bliss Temple, and we got drugs that make everybody seem like their skin is yellow. So please feel free to drop by at local Springfield, USA, although it's in Canada.
Yeah, and guys, it's okay to be yellow.
It is okay to be yellow.
One other thing, I wanted to mention this for another reason. Hannah, are you back, or are you still?
I'm still here.
Okay. I wanted to talk about this for another reason. There's a couple of stories that are related because there's something I'm gonna have. I'm kind of like putting my thoughts together about this. But one of the other reasons why I wanted to present this Seattle Weekly story about this guy who essentially created a hippie commune and then got accused of rape, even though the evidence against him is there just wasn't enough to convict him at all. So, you know, there just wasn't enough evidence. I mean, most of the people who are when you're involved with this much drug taking and partying and all that, and you know you fucked the guy, and not just you, but lots of other women have, because he's like, you know, even if he is 50 years old or whatever, and you're like in your late teens, early 20s, there's just not enough evidence to, you know, to convict him. So the reason why I wanted to mention this is because what we're looking at with this, as well as stuff that's going on in Hollywood, as well as a couple of other stories that I want to briefly touch on. One is Ryan Philippe, the actor. You might know him as the poor man's Justin Timberlake before when Justin Timberlake was the poor man's Ryan Philippe. You may also know him from like Cruel Intentions, if you like remember that movie. Ryan Philippe has been dealing with assault charges. So people are basically just sort of writing this off as another another, case of Hollywood and all of its issues, which are things that we've known about for a long time. And then we also have another story that came out where that was written in the Star Chronicle, as well as a couple of other places, that claim Michael Moore, the director, has been accused of sexual harassment by 4 underage girls. Now, I wanted to mention them all. What the hell is this? Get out of here. I wanted to mention them all because there is a thread that ties them all together. What we're looking at with people like Michael Moore and Ryan Philippe is this sort of, shit going on in Hollywood, and then this Seattle Weekly story. The people involved in these various stories are essentially male feminists, right? Like the guy who, the firefighter himself, would be among those. The guy who created this house. And we're looking at the consequences of being in an environment that is populated by feminists of male and female alike. These people that are dealing with this would probably find a lot of support and help through discussions like the ones that we have here at Honey Badger Radio as men's rights advocates, as men's issues advocates that want to talk about male and female nature in as honest a way as possible to try to get to the bottom of why things are the way they are and what we need to look at, realistically. So this is what I'm getting at. When you learn about a story like this, which happens in Seattle, Washington is on the West Coast. The West Coast is an extremely left-wing part of the country. Okay. What?
He's an anti-feminist.
Okay. It's an extremely left-wing part of the country. When you hear about this stuff happening, you have, there might be an inclination to take pleasure in it. And I've seen that with what was going on in Hollywood as well. The same thing going with Michael Moore, for example, right? I think it's important to note that these things happen partly because of the culture that has been built within it. Like, you're not only, when it comes to the stuff going on in Hollywood, you're either looking at people who are preying on other people, which of course right now the pointing is only going one way. It's pointing towards men as people preying on women, but we know that women prey on men in Hollywood too, and women prey on women, and men prey on men, etc. But you either have people preying on other people, or you have people who are falsely accusing other people, right? And in what I believe that in an environment where gynocentrism and feminism and all of that is sort of at the core of everyone's belief system, or the majority of people's belief systems, then you're going to get both of those things. And it actually becomes difficult to determine whether or not someone is preying on somebody because, male feminists do have, it comes out, over and over again. We see lots of accusations. So you can't dismiss them all. There's definitely a chance that some of that is really happening. But on the other hand, the people who are coming out and crying victim are also doing something that, that whether it's true or not, they're also sort of falling prey to that. So it actually becomes really difficult to determine whether something is coming out of feminism in the form of false accusations, or sort of blowing up the problem into something bigger than it really is. Like if a guy, looks at you the wrong way, or if he calls you sweet cheeks or something, you compare that to actual rape. You basically say it's the same thing. That's feminist ideology that does that. So on the one hand, you have people that diagnose the problem and make it a rape issue, and then you have the people who are more likely to be a part of the problem because they are going into this with the idea that this is how I get female favor, this is how I win with women, or if you're a woman and you're a feminist and you're involved in this is your idea of I am entitled to this because I am a woman and therefore I deserve men, because this is what men would do in my situation. Do you guys know what I'm saying? So you have this toxic integration of people that all share similar ideologies, and they're all clashing with each other. So you have, the women who exploit the men and the men who exploit the women. And then they blame the rest of the world for the shit that they're creating within their own microcosm. So I wanted to make a mention of this. Now, my wife corrected me. The fireman who created the Bliss Jungle apparently is anti-feminist. He seems to be. Okay, he seems to be. But I would guess that with the environment that he invited, he is at the very least somewhat like he didn't have a problem essentially creating this environment with like young girls and drugs and sex and stripper poles and all that in Seattle, Washington. And then with the Michael Moore thing, there's something else I got to mention with the Michael Moore, because I think, again, because this seems to be happening to people that we would consider to be regressives, okay? Like Hollywood, you know, I have no love for Hollywood in terms of the people. I just love movies. And it's actually kind of, it's conflicting because I love movies, but I can't stand some of the actors. But here's the thing. We should not take pleasure in these accusations, and we certainly should not spread misinformation. I mention that because this Michael Moore story, there is nothing that corroborates the truth of it. This is likely just a tabloid that is not true at all. But I saw this being shared around on Facebook and stuff, in the Honey Badger Facebook group and in other places, and I want to nip it in the bud because, guys, you know, I know that there's a part of us that there may be a part of some people or many people that like the idea that Michael Moore is getting accused of something because we don't like Michael Moore. But we don't have to not like Michael Moore to want him to be subjected to not just false accusations, but false stories. This didn't happen at all. There's nothing that says that this did happen. So you have to like be cautious because it's important to remain on target in terms of the truth. These accusations have not happened. This is basically, there are a few websites that have written about this, but they have no original sources. It doesn't go anywhere. Don't take pleasure in it because it's not true.
Business 2 News confirms that it is fake. It is, they traced it back to a site called Freedom Junction, JUNKSHUN Junction. And it is fake news. It looks like, I don't know if this is one of those shit-stirring fake sites or if it's a parody site, but it is fake news. It's entirely, and it's one of those things that, no, actually they traced, I guess they traced, what is it? They traced it back as being reported. And it's the Freedom Junction is the one claiming that Fox News reported it. Fox News never reported this.
They never reported it.
So
that's what I'm saying. So you gotta, like, you know, remain adamant. Like, if you see something come across and you're like, oh, that sounds juicy, Michael Moore, fuck that guy. Don't just jump on, you know. And I make mistakes too, you know. So it can be difficult, but just try to remain adamant because, you know, Michael Moore's a piece of shit, but he doesn't need to be accused of sexual harassment before people discover he's a piece of shit. In fact, all that does is display your own gynocentrism, because it's like, oh, look, he's been accused. That means he's officially a piece of shit. No, you didn't have to wait for that to happen. There's plenty of other evidence that shows that he's a piece of shit anyway. So
yeah.
And if he wasn't being accused, wouldn't make him one either.
No, it wouldn't.
Michael Moore is way too principled of a guy for him to forsake his own feminist principles. I mean, he has the wrong principles, in my opinion. But yeah, it's like, there's no way. Like, it's like, it's almost as unlikely as him voting Republican.
Almost, but but the thing is, this is the thing too. Like, when it comes to male feminists, right? I believe that they do it for one of two reasons. Either they genuinely do believe in in feminism, and they think that the only way women can get some kind of equality in their minds is to become feminists themselves, because only men can give women freedom, and that's holding women to a standard equal to men. Or they are not feminists, or they don't actually believe in the ideology, but they want the favor of women, so they become feminists because they want women to like them. And these are the reasons why they do it. And it's possible that Michael Moore could have done it for either. He could be a feminist for either of those reasons. I've seen him on Bill Maher. Was it like just, men die early because they argue with women. They shouldn't argue with them. Just agree, I think is what he said. Just agree. Just cave in. So, clearly he's a spineless cuck, but that doesn't mean that, he deserves to have hit pieces written about him that are not true. So I say wait, if something happens, something happens. But we don't need someone to accuse him of something to determine what kind of person he is. We've seen his work. We've seen what he does. That's enough. It's just important to stay on the facts is ultimately what I'm getting at. Stay on the facts. So
when you want to take... if and when you want to take down an institution of any size and you don't have legitimate grounds to do it, the quickest, easiest way is to accuse its men of victimizing women. And just like the free speech thing, when you take it away from other people, you make a rod for your own back. Because every community has men in it as well as women, including yours. Whatever community you're in, be it left, right, libertarian, whatever, it has men in it. So you're next.
Yes.
Because you have no defense against this if you espouse the idea of listen and believe on the grounds that men have no defense against such accusations. So be very fucking careful.
Exactly. And lastly, another thing that I got to point out, if you are a male feminist that thinks that you can champion the rights of women while at the same time hanging out with them in a feminist environment specifically, okay? Be very careful, because it's only a matter of time before you become the victim of an accusation or something. So even if you have the best of intentions, I think this is, and again, I'm not that conservative. Even if people might think that I am, I'm not. And I'm not certainly traditionalist. But when Mike Pence says that he won't go, out with women without his wife present or whatever it was that he said, it was like a few months back and people gave him a bunch of shit for it. I get it. Because if he did, he'd probably be facing accusations. So, listen to the electric Pence. Think about that. If you think that the environment you're in is so hostile towards men that just hanging out with women in a private setting could get you accused of something, and everyone else in the environment is going to believe her, why would you put yourself in that position? This is something Hollywood should be listening to. I mean, I haven't heard anything about James Woods getting accused of sexual assault. I haven't heard anything about, Kevin Sorbo getting accused of sexual assault. This is all, these accusations are coming, I think, towards people who are ingrained in the culture enough that you can safely accuse them. So, and not everybody can just come out as gay and avoid, consequences. So just think about that too. You have to win a couple of Oscars before you do that. At least a couple.
Although, if a guy gets accused by women of sexual harassment and then he comes out as gay, that might work. But it better be true, because, the next thing you know, you're going to end up with people interested in you that you're not interested in if it's not true. With Michael Moore, when I first saw this, I thought, that's bullshit. And it's not because I think Michael Moore is a great guy. It's because I think Michael Moore is the kind of guy who wouldn't risk his career doing something that stupid. There are ways in which he's a very stupid guy, but that's not one of them. And it just rang wrong. And that, I looked at stuff. He was married for 20 years, and he went through a divorce, and he had his whole career sort of took over everything else. And this is somebody who he doesn't necessarily put any interest in women in front of the things he's trying to achieve. And if he was ever to be accused of something, I sincerely doubt that it would be 4 underage girls going, oh, he sexually harassed us while we were staffers. It would be somebody that was trying to discredit his narrative, or it would be somebody who thought they could offer him a piece of ass to get into his next documentary, and then was told, no, that's not going to work, and you'd see the fury of a woman scorned. It wouldn't be something like this. So it just, I don't know. Sometimes you got to look at the person's regular behavior, and yeah, the person's a dipshit, or the person is a scam artist or a scoundrel. But is this consistent with the manner in which that person is a scam artist and a scoundrel? And it just isn't. It isn't consistent with Michael Moore.
Yep. And again, just if you see a story and and it sounds too good, like, oh man, this is perfect, that's when you should probably look into it to make sure it's true. And that it even exists as a story. And then after that, there's like several steps. Like first you say, okay, is this actually really happening? Like in the case of Michael Moore, this is not a real story. This is fake news. Fake news, guys. And then even if it's real, like if this is a real story that happened, remember, it's just an accusation. And these people are just making, so then you got to like take it another step further. Give him the benefit of the doubt all the way. That doesn't mean that you like him or support him. Okay, but it means that, the truth is more important than what is going to feel good in the moment. And somebody said he couldn't even rape them. And then so that's my final word on that, because I saw this getting shared, and I'm just saying, be careful, guys, because if we share misinformation and then we start acting like it's real, we're adding to the problem. There's a lot of fake shit going around in the media. We don't want to be a part of that. As far as the Ryan Philippe thing goes, I just wanted to mention that this has actually been going on for a little while, but it's reemerged because of the whole Harvey Weinstein thing. This is also unconfirmed. There are dueling narratives, but Entertainment Tonight is trying to make it sound one-sided. The fact is that Ryan Philippe's girlfriend, by the way, they're 22 years apart or something. Dude, don't get involved with girls this young. I don't care how hot they are. They could be a problem. She claims that he beat her, and then she has photos of bruises and stuff on her body. And then his counterclaim is that she essentially just tried to hit him, and then she beat herself up and took pictures. And again, the fact is, both of those could be true. But when you're involved with crazy people, and I mean, they could both be crazy, so I'm not just throwing it on her, you're just increasing the risk of that. Anybody who you could be involved with that has the potential to hit you or hit themselves and blame you is somebody you don't want to be involved with. She might be an example of those, hot but nasty chicks I was talking about. So be careful. Be picky with the women you're with. No, don't just go for the fucking cup size. And with the Seattle Weekly story, it's basically the same thing. This guy was a lot older. He was involved with younger girls, and it was only a matter of time before one of them made an accusation. And of course, because you see, he was like a pretty loaded dude once he got his job as a firefighter. He was doing well. So, of course, there could be some people that want a piece of that. So this is something to consider when you if you're going to meet girls, you're going to interact with them. You might want to get to know them and find out what they believe in. And if they're feminists, I would probably stay away. That's just my advice, but that's what I think.
Yeah, the red flags we talked about in a previous episode, I believe, of the Badger Talk show, not the Pussycat one, but this is probably one of the biggest. I am a feminist. That's probably one of the biggest, red flags. The minute she says that, you want to distance yourself. And I want to point out with Ryan Philippe, there was a thorough police investigation. There were hearings with the police on whether or not to proceed, and they decided not to pursue charges. So this wasn't just, an accusation was made and nothing came of it. This was an accusation was made. The police thoroughly investigated it. The police said there's nothing here for us to pursue. Mm-hmm. That tells you something right there.
Exactly, and yet it's reemerged. So this is just it. Like, why would it reemerge? Well, I think that just like anything else, because it's sort of like this, there's a trend, right? So the Weinstein thing comes out, and now everyone's coming out of the woodwork in Hollywood to tell their story, and it almost makes me think, how many of these people just want to be a part of what's happening? It's like their bubble is so dull and boring. They're like, oh, this person's come forward, to talk about their sexual assault or rape or harassment experience. Well, I can do that too. And so there, again, I'm sure that some of them are legitimate, but when you have so many, and you have it comes from this kind of narcissistic place called Hollywood, it's hard to tell who's telling the truth and who's just jumping on the bandwagon. And then on top of that, the media is going to jump all over every single thing, no matter how unconfirmed. And sometimes, as in the case with Michael Moore, they're going to make shit up, or they're going to try and make it tangentially related, or they're going to dig up old stories. The Ryan Philippe one is from months ago, but it comes back because of this. So you have to understand that what you're looking at is just a cavalcade of narcissism, attention-seeking bullshit with some truth perhaps sprinkled in there, but it's difficult to find because everyone is trying to be a part of it, It's sad because it's difficult to tell what's true. But you have to remain adamant because we have to be better than that.
I want to make a comparison real quick because it's interesting. A feminist, somebody pointed out, feminists would say the police are part of the patriarchy. I want to read a thing on a different accusation that other police handled and how they handled it, and just contrast it with them, thoroughly investigating Ryan Philippe's accusation that he faced and determining that there was nothing to pursue. At one point, angry over being thwarted in family court, Amy went for the jugular, accusing Roger of entering her home and raping her. She offered absolutely no evidence to back the accusation. No witness, no medical evidence, nothing but her own word. This accusation was pursued by a female police detective from a larger municipality within the small metro area where we live. We don't have Chicago's crime rate, but the community has had enough that the detective should have been experienced in handling cases of actual rape, familiar with victim behavior, and savvy enough to be suspicious when, in the course of her investigation, her, quote, victim, end quote, couldn't get her story straight. After Roger proved his alibi following the original statement, Amy claimed she'd given the wrong date. When that was debunked as well, she changed it again, along with the time, and then a third time when the second didn't pan out. Each time she revised her story, Roger was once again rounded up by police and taken in for questioning. And for the record, that's not being arrested. They don't read you your rights. You don't get your, all of the accommodations that you're supposed to get when you're arrested. But they still put you in a jail cell. You still have to pay bail to get out. But you were never under arrest. At one point, he was questioned for 12 hours without food, water, or access to his medications. This was a diabetic asthmatic. Adding insult to injury, police, quote, misplaced, end quote, the emergency medical supplies, which when they took him into custody, they were placed in their care in case of sudden need. No record of their receipt was recorded. So this is how they handle this type of accusation. Here they have all of this story changing, lack of evidence, details being shuffled. And they continued. They were trying everything they could to find a reason to take action. And we all expected it to get dropped. And it never did. They actually reserved the right to charge him throughout the entire time that this ordeal was taking place, which, by the way, was 7 years. And here we have, Ryan Philippe. If they looked at the details of his accusation that he faced, and they didn't find a reason to do something, they didn't find anything.
Mm-hmm. Hannah? Hello? Hannah? We lost her again, didn't we?
We did.
Hannah? Hannah!
This is why it's got an H on the end, so you can go, Hannah!
Oh, well. We lost her. Hannah, you're gone.
Were you guys able to hear, like, when I said just after witnessing all of this, that was the last thing I said, and then I couldn't hear anybody. Were you guys able to hear me up to that point?
No.
We lost you about 20, 30 seconds ago. I think my time perception may be fucked.
Okay. Yeah, I ended with saying I think that based on my experience with that case and watching that case pan out, if police investigated Ryan Philippe's accusations that he was facing and found no reason to pursue charges at all, that to me is evidence of his innocence. Because if they had found anything, if they had found a shadow of the doubt of his innocence, they would have pursued charges. That's it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I guess unless there's any other final thoughts on any of this stuff, we're just going to close it out. We went for 2 hours. Time to do the after show, I think. All right, good. Oh, let me read a couple super chats, though. So, Destron1201 gave us $5. Thank you, Destron, and says, you know what grinds my gears? When you question a socialist post trying to understand their position, and then they point at you and make that body snatcher noise. Thank you, Destron. Sorry, I'm feeling a little under the weather. Wargoat number 6, or just Wargoat 6, gave us $15 and says, just getting the badger fat. Well, thank you, Wargoat, for that very generous donation. And I want to thank the rest of you guys for coming on the stream. We're going to go ahead and close this out and go into the after show, where we will be talking about a couple of articles. One by the Daily Caller's Ian Miles Chong. It's a good guy. He writes an article entitled Progressive Stacking is Infiltrating College Classrooms, which I think we knew. But we're going to go ahead and see what Ian has to say about it. And also this one we didn't know, by the colleague. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it is minority students feel marginalized by historic buildings imposing masculine paneling. That's right. Wood paneling is quiet, imposing, and masculine, and it needs to stop. So we're going to go ahead and look at those in the after show. If you guys want to join us in the after show, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. We will be returning to our regularly scheduled programming this week. I probably won't be doing shows for the rest of the week because I'm still recovering, but I am hoping that by next week I will be at close to 100% capacity and will be doing more shows. Although I will see you guys on Friday because I will be doing a super stream to try to raise money so that we can go to Calgary. If you guys have any ideas for any guests that I can get on, not like William Shatner or something, because I don't think I could get him on, even though I'd love to. But if you guys have any ideas and some guests that would be willing to come on and hang out with us, send me a tweet at Zanamaru, that's Zanamaru, or you can just look up, or you can send it to Honey Badger Radio too, even though I don't check that one as often. So I would like to thank everyone who helped me do the write-ups for the show and also corrected me on some things during the show. And I would also like to thank you guys for joining us on the stream to watch the live show. And I would like to thank my co-panelists, Max, Mike, and Hannah, for coming on. Despite our internet struggles, I think we did well. And as you guys can see, if you guys are on Twitch, that seems to be the best way. I love the emojis there, too. I also noticed there's a lot of frog emojis that come up, so praise Keck for that. So if you guys want to just be on Twitch next time, I think that'd be fucking cool, because I find that shit to be funny for some fucking reason. Especially that one little black and white face of that guy who looks really unplussed. I don't know why, but I think that's just a funny-ass face. I don't even know what it means. I'm not familiar with...
Speaking of frogs, I've recently joined gab.ia. You should go there. It's like Twitter without the cancer. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm on Gab too, but I haven't really been on there that much. But yeah, definitely.
I am as well.
There you go. So check it out. Yeah, that's it. Shiro put the guy in. It's like a, I don't know, like an unimpressed looking middle-aged man or something. Well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and take us out. So we will see you guys on the after show. Thank you for coming on HBR News.